Excellent. So thanks everyone for joining today. Firstly, we would like to begin to acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands we are joining from today. Today, I'm in Menangen on the lands of the Jagera, Turrbal and Yugara people and recognise their continuing connection to lands, waters and community. We pay our respects to elders past and present and extend that respect to all First Nations people joining us today. We honour the strength, vision and legacy of First Nations people, especially the next generation who carry forward the tradition with pride and resilience. Perfect. So we're also encouraging you to get involved in local events in your community this NAIDOC week with a wide variety of locations and events, which can be found online at www.naidocweek.org.au. So again, just a welcome to our Postgrad July PhD showcase. There's still the opportunity if you would like to be part of our Postgrad July membership spotlight. Please feel free to send through a little bio and a photo to the WOMEESA email address. And if you would like to host a local postgrad meetup, please feel free to send through an EOI or what's going on in your local community. Also could be at Goldschmidt. It's not necessarily a locational factor as well. Excellent. So back to our showcase. Today we'll be starting off with Samantha Russo from James Cook University. Samantha is a current PhD student at James Cook University. Her current research is focusing on understanding rare earth element systematics with an emphasis on rare earth element ion absorption clay deposits through whole rock and mineral fraction, specific trace element and stable isotopic geochemistry. Got that. Her previous honours research was focusing on reconstructing ancient seawater chemistry in hypogene and supergene banded ion formations through rare earth element, whole rock and mineral fraction specific patterns. Perfect. So I will stop sharing and hand over to Sam.
Yeah, let me just share. Hopefully this works okay. Yeah, I'm hoping you can see
just 1 second.
everything. Yeah.
Yeah, looks good.
Okay. Yeah. So the presentation that I'll be giving today is just a very brief overview of a review paper that I was lucky enough to get published very recently. So I would obviously like to thank my supervisors and my co-authors, Nacho, Helen, and Alex, for really bringing that into fruition. If it will go to the next slide. So before I start off, I'd like to acknowledge the Bindal and the Wilgarukapa peoples who've been caring for this region known as Townsville, where I'm presenting from today. And I want to pay my respects to elders past and present and extend that on to any Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander peoples who are present with us today. So when I was compiling the literature for the review paper, I stumbled upon this quote, and I try and include this quote wherever I can, because I think a lot of people who look at rare earth elements resonate really well with it. And essentially it says, "The rare earths perplex us in our researches, baffle us in our speculations, and haunt us in our very dreams. They stretch like an unknown sea before us, mocking, mystifying, and murmuring strange revelations and possibilities." And that quote is attributed to Sir William Crookes back in 1902. And I think it's really amazing how more than 100 years after the fact, that still stands very true. So just an overview of the presentation that I'll be giving today. I will give a bit of a brief background into why these deposit types are important, and then I will go through the mineral systems framework and how that applies to ion adsorption clay deposits, and then I'll go over the conceptual exploration model and then close with some concluding remarks. So I'm pretty sure most of us are aware that a transition to a high and green technology future requires critical elements, and rare earth elements are included within that. And one of the things that I just want to drive home with this slide is that one of the concerns that we're facing is whether our production can meet our demand. And so when we're talking about rare earth elements, some of the world's largest and most significant rare earth element deposits are carbonatites. For example, Mount Weld, which is in Western Australia. And one of the main concerns that we're facing at the moment with mining and processing carbonatites is that they are typically light rare earth element enriched, although they can contain some economic heavy rare earth element grades. When we're talking about elements being critical, our heavy rare earth elements are considered more critical compared to our light, and that's essentially because they are less abundant in our crust and they're much more difficult to extract and also separate from one another. And also to do with the mining and processing of rare earth element carbonatites, it's challenging because we also run the risk of environmental contaminants because things like uranium and thorium are typically hosted alongside rare earth elements in accessory phases such as monazite and xenotime. And so as a result, global interest in iron adsorption clay deposits has spiked. And essentially, an iron adsorption clay deposit is formed through a bedrock that is progressively weathered to form a weathering profile. And within that weathering profile, we have a rare earth element accumulation zone where rare earths are liberated with mineral dissolution and then fixated onto clay surfaces through adsorption. And because of this adsorption, they typically require less aggressive reagent salts, and we typically have lower uranium and thorium contents because the rare earths are no longer hosted within mineral lattices with our radionuclides. And just coming back to the point of heavy rare earth elements being considered more critical, well, iron adsorption clay deposits serve as a resource for 80% of the global heavy rare earth element production that we see today. And so at the moment, China hosts majority of the iron adsorption clay deposits, and that's largely attributed to the decades worth of exploration done in that region. And that's not to say that we don't have potential elsewhere, as we're seeing with global projects emerging in places such as Brazil and even within Australia. And so, just briefly touching on the mineral systems framework, it is a holistic framework that was initially developed for the purpose of the petroleum industry, but it has since been applied to other commodities and also other deposit types. And essentially, it says that when a mineral system is properly understood, it provides a larger exploration target than the characteristics of the target ore body alone. And in the case of iron adsorption clay deposits, what we're talking about there is considering the source, mobility, adsorption, as well as the preservation of our rare earth element enrichments. So one of the main things I want to emphasize when we're considering rare earth element source is mineral weathering susceptibility. So how easily weatherable our minerals are. And so typically within these systems, rare earth elements are hosted within accessory phases, and phases such as fluorocarbonates, allanite, titanite, and apatite are our most prominent sources because they weather readily within these systems, whereas other accessory phases such as zircon, monazite, and xenotime are more resistant and are less likely to contribute to significant proportions of ion exchangeable rare earths. And so putting this into the larger context of source rocks, here, I just want to talk about local basement rocks. And when I'm talking about local basement rocks, I'm referring to in situ weathering profiles. And we typically see granitic source rocks as the most prominent source for ion exchange, ion adsorption clay deposits. And that's as a result of the rare earth element accessory phases that we have present. And I also just want to briefly touch on the different types of granites. I will exclude M-type granites from this description. I think most people will understand why. But if we look at, say, S-type, granites, for example, we tend to have more resistant accessory phases, which makes it difficult for these minerals to break down and therefore liberate the rare earths for their absorption onto clays. Whereas perhaps types such as A and I type granites, they contain a blend of weatherable and resistant, or predominantly uh, weatherable accessory phases that make them more prospective for forming these types of deposits. That's not to say that S-type granites can't form iron adsorption clay deposits, but there are a few more barriers in order for that to occur. And I just really want to emphasize when we're talking about rocks, we're really just talking about minerals. And so with this, can we have mafic, metamorphic, sedimentary sources as well for in situ weathering? And yeah, I think the answer is yes. We're starting to see the emergence of some of those examples on the global landscape, because we're really just concerned about mineral weathering. And just a little bit of a sidestep. So I briefly mentioned in situ weathering. So that kind of begs the question, well, what about transported constituents? What about transported weathering? And so we can definitely have external sources, which through sedimentary processes such as fluvial transport, which we see that within the Coopermurra deposit in South Australia, you can have weather constituents moved and create rare earth element enrichment onto clays through that. And that also opens up the possibility of aeolian transport. And also then just considering fluids such as hydrothermal fluids that might aid in upgrading or transforming minerals into more readily weatherable constituents, and also the influence of possible basinal brines. So with the intermediate stage between rare earth element source and that being weathered to rare earth elements then being absorbed and fixed onto clays, we have rare earth element mobility. And I will admit this is my favorite section, so I'll try not to bore you all with the details. So with rare earth element mobility, that is largely controlled by pH and ligand availability. And so under acidic conditions, we tend to see more hydrated rare earth species, as well as rare earth sulfate and fluoride species. Whereas under circumneutral and going into more alkaline conditions, we tend to see more rare earth element, carbonate, phosphate, and hydroxide species, with some minor significance of sulfate and fluoride species. And one of the things that I just want to insinuate here, and if anyone has any questions after, I'm happy to talk about it, is also just understanding how these ligands can also promote rare earth element fractionation, where perhaps at circumneutral to alkaline conditions, we have heavy rare earth elements being preferentially complexed in solution. And then also how that ties into when we're thinking about those production versus demand concerns around light and heavy rare earth elements. But I'll just leave that there, just some food for thought. And when we then discuss rare earth element adsorption, so fixating the rare earths after the mobilization, this is largely controlled by surface physicochemical properties of clays. These types of clays that we see are normally one-to-one, so things like kaolinite and halloysite, but because nature is very random at times, we can also see smectites, micas, and vermiculates as well. And what we're most concerned with in terms of clay properties, the specific surface area and the cation exchange capacity. So the clay's ability to host rare earths onto its structure. And as you can probably guess, this is also controlled by pH. And so typically a pH around 5.5 to 6.5 is considered ideal for these deposits. Anything lower than this, you then run the risk of competition with hydrogen ions, and anything above this, you also then run the risk of hydrolysis, which can influence then the clay's properties and its ability to absorb rare earth elements. And another thing that I just want to insinuate here, not only is understanding clay structures and clay properties important for absorbing rare earths to form deposits, but it's equally as important for desorbing the rare earths for the purpose of mining and processing. So another food for thought. And of course, none of this matters unless you actually preserve the thing. And that is largely controlled by chemical and mechanical processes. Of course, these are very interlinked with one another, especially when you're discussing chemical leaching, and then erosion with surface runoff, or, topographic hill slope erosion, where potentially you might have also saprolytic collapse as a result of clay dissolution from excessive rainfall and things like that, as well as other mechanical processes such as subsidence and tectonic activity, which can disturb enrichments and, promote lateral transport and therefore lower the grade of these ore bodies. So preservation is one of the most important things. And when we're then constructing the conceptual exploration model, when we're piecing this all together, um, we can see that we have source, where that can be either local or external source, and we're most concerned about the minerals within those systems and their ability to break down and liberate the rare earths, so then they can be mobilized within our systems. They can complex with the ligands or exist as free hydrated species dependent on their pH, and then allowing for the rare earths to then absorb onto clay surfaces, also a function of pH and affinity of clays and complexes, and of course then preserving that ore body. Um, and so I will just wrap up with some concluding remarks. So the transition to a high and green technology future requires increased production for rare earth elements. And ion adsorption clay deposits have sparked interest as a result of the low environmental contaminants and more efficient rare earth element extractions relative to other rare earth element deposit types, such as carbonatites. And applying the mineral systems framework, we can better understand the rare earth element source, mobility, adsorption, as well as the preservation of the ore body. And like I said at the start of this presentation, this is just a very, very brief overview of a review paper that I recently published. So if you want to check it out, please do. Or I hope the QR code works. I asked ChatGPT to make it, so we'll see. Otherwise, yeah, if you have any questions, feel free to email me, or yeah, ask any questions now.
Amazing. I can confirm that the QR code works. So
Okay, good.
congrats to
I
ChatGPT.
just realized I just stopped sharing it. I should have left it up longer. Oh well.
That's all good. Do we have any questions for Sam? That was an excellent presentation. Mm. Oh, we do have a hand up.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I hope it's mine.
That was, yeah, sorry, it was yours.
I wanted to ask, so I don't have a background in your theme, but it was super interesting, and I've been wondering, so when you're talking about the increased demand, which makes sense, do you know if globally all of the potential exploration sites have been identified already, or do you think that there's actually more, and with increased technology, we are able to find further deposits?
Yeah, I think definitely in the case of ion adsorption clay deposits, because most of the exploration in that space has been focused on South China in the past, and it's only really recently that people have actually looked at these deposits as being worthwhile. I think in the past they've often been overlooked on a global scale just because they tend to have lower grades than, say, something like carbonatites. But now people are really catching on to also their environmental benefits. And so, yeah, there are a lot of places that are most definitely underexplored. And yeah, I think just trying to navigate that on a global scale and see how an exploration model looks for a global scale, rather than just previously when ones have just been built up for South China, because weathering history across the globe is very diverse and very different. So very underexplored.
Thank you.
Amazing. I can think of many examples around the world, and even for
Mm.
both of us here in Queensland.
Yep.
Perfect. Were there any other questions before we continue on? Feel free to pop your hand up if it's possible, or pop it in the chat. Excellent. Well, it's certainly given me a lot of food for thought. So thank you so much, Sam.
Thank you.
So we'll move on to Mana now, who is a second-year PhD candidate at the School of Geography, Earth and Atmospheric Sciences at the University of Melbourne. Her PhD focuses on the sedimentology and geochemistry of Precambrian carbonates to understand the surface processes and geochemistry of Precambrian Earth. She previously worked on the Teena Dolomite in the McArthur Basin and is currently working on the Maranoan carbonates in the Flinders Ranges of Australia. So please hand it over to Mana.
Thank you. Thanks for that introduction. Let me just get my screen up. Okay.
Got this.
Okay. Oh no. Oh no.
Okay.
Something is going wrong.
So it's the green share down the bottom, and then it gives you the options.
Yeah, I think it's my computer's going, are you sure you want to do this? So I don't really know what's going on. It's telling me to leave the meeting. That's not good. Okay. Hold on. Here we go. Got it.
Got it?
Okay, yeah. No, my systems just wanted me to give permission to share with Zoom. So very good. Thank you so much for your patience. Okay. And can you see my sharing? Has it worked?
Yep.
Amazing. Okay. All right. Okay. Thank you so much. And thank you so much to WOMEESA for putting on this postgraduate showcase and also for inviting me. I'm really excited to be here to tell you about one of my projects for my PhD on these strange breccias from the Teena Dolomite. Ooh, is it working? Maybe I'll have to do this. Okay, so before I get into that project, I thought I would just do a little overview of my PhD. I can kind of summarize that by saying I look at Precambrian carbonates. And the Precambrian is a super dynamic time in Earth's history. It makes up about 88% of Earth's history. So loads of things would have happened during that time, including the oxygenation of the Earth's atmosphere, as well as the appearance of life and all of these exciting things. So this is this illustration. I don't know if you can see my mouse. Hopefully you can. So this illustration is depicting the Archean Earth. So you can see that it's a super alien kind of looking planet. And any kind of research in the Precambrian really is about working out how we got from this alien thing to an Earth that we're more familiar with today. But as you can imagine, when you're looking at deep time, the rock record is fairly limited. But we do have quite a lot of marine sediments from the Precambrian, which is great. And I work with carbonate rocks specifically. And carbonates are really great because carbonate minerals are known to precipitate directly out of seawater. So it then allows us to have this record of the ancient marine seawater chemistry through time. But we can also use their sedimentology to gain insights about the environment as well. So, but they have been traditionally understudied, mainly because, of course, of the limited rock record, but also because Precambrian carbonates specifically have been considered to be different. They are quite different to what we know carbonates to be in the Phanerozoic. But I'm hoping that through my PhD I can demonstrate that we have a lot to gain by looking at these carbonates really carefully, but also they might not actually be as weird as we think they are. So what I use sedimentology mainly, but a bit of geochemistry to really just try and understand the paleoenvironment conditions on early Earth. Okay, so with that, I will just get into my project. This is on the Teena breccias, and this I'm going to be sharing with you some results from a paper that we recently published in Precambrian research. And I just want to thank my supervisors Malcolm Wallace and Ashley Hood, and my co-authors Chris Reed and Nicola Kaywood for all of their support, through this project. And I'm really excited to be sharing this work. So for this project, I'm going to take you to the McArthur Basin in the Northern Territory. So this is this green region here, and the study area is really mostly confined to the Batten Fault Zone area. And this is where you find, some significant stratiform zinc deposits. So this region is generally known for being important for base metal deposits. And one of the most famous is the McArthur River, or the HYC deposit. And HYC stands for Here's Your Chance, which I think is an absolutely brilliant name for any ore deposit. And we also have the Teena deposit here as well. So the McArthur Basin is kind of part of a much larger zinc province called the Carpentaria Zinc Belt, which also includes the Mount Isa Basin as well. So super important for base metal deposits. So the unit that we're looking at today is the Teena Dolomite, and it directly underlies the Barney Creek Formation. And so the Barney Creek Formation is of big interest to lots of people because this is the unit that actually hosts that HYC zinc deposit. So the good people at Tech Australia, the company that was exploring this region, noticed that there were these breccias appearing in multiple drill cores. And because of its kind of relatively close proximity to the Barney Creek Formation and the ore, they wanted to know if it could tell us anything about the mineralization in that area. So this took me to Mount Isa, to the core storage facility, and my job was really to figure out how these breccias formed, the kind of distribution, but also to work out if it gives us any clues to the process of mineralization in this area. So these are some strat sections that I put together. And so the gray here is that Barney Creek Formation, the one that everyone is interested in, and the Teena Dolomite is the one in this kind of bluey gray. And what was really interesting is that the breccias seemed to kind of appear at the same stratigraphic position across multiple drill cores. And so this is it here, up in the uppermost section of the Teena Dolomite, right beneath the base of the Barney Creek. And this is what these breccias look like. So you can kind of understand the source of confusion because they have quite a variation of textures. And so we just documented that and broadly categorized it into in situ to transporter textures. So kind of this crackle breccia to this matrix supported breccia. But what's interesting about this isn't really the class, because the class it's all Teena Dolomite. But it's actually what we're interested in is what's between it, what is infilling these fractures, and that kind of tells us about how these breccias formed. So these fractures are filled. Turns out they're filled with fibrous cement. So we've got a couple of types. So here I've got this white fibrous cement and also this brown, what we call the brown plumose cements. And in thin section, they look like this, and they have this interesting kind of bladed morphology. And fibrous cements are actually really characteristic of a marine environment. And this is because when you form these kind of fibrous cements, basically what happens is you have like a fracture or a cavity opening up in a rock, seawater is pumping through that cavity, and from that seawater, you're precipitating these carbonate minerals. And these minerals are precipitating super rapidly, so they're competing for space. And so really they can only really grow upwards and into the open spaces in the cavity. And so they form this kind of bladed structure. So this is important because now we know that we're probably looking at something fairly shallow where seawater can still penetrate. And you've also got these other kind of fractures being infilled with these dark sediments as well. And so when you have fractures that are filled with sediment and these marine cements, what you have are neptunian dykes. And this is an important insight because this tells us that this is a synsedimentary feature. So we're looking at something that's happening super early on the surface or the early subsurface. And the Neptunian dykes, their variation also tells us a little bit about timing, as kind of timing relationships as well. So here we have these kind of white cemented Neptunian dykes being cross-cut by these sediment-filled Neptunian dykes. And then you've got some really complicated textures in this other one here where you've got another generation of cements growing. So just keep that in the back of your mind for later. So the next step was to see how widely distributed these breccias are. So all of these points are basically localities where we found breccias and or Neptunian dykes in the Teena Dolomite. And you can see that north to south, that's like 160 kilometers or something. So this is super widespread, so it's suggesting that we have a regionally significant event responsible for the brecciation of the Teena Dolomite. So that's the kind of model that we're suggesting here. So we think that the breccias and the Neptunian dykes represent the onset of an extensional event at around 1640 million years ago. So basically what you have is some normal faults, and because of the seismicity, you have fractures also forming in the fault blocks as well. And because we're kind of in that area where we have seawater, so the seawater is kind of going into those fractures, and so we're forming those marine cemented Neptunian dykes. So as we progress, we have a deepening of the basin, and then we have the deposition of the Barney Creek Formation, which is a kind of more deep water shale unit. But we still have some like seismicity. So we have fracturing of the Teena Dolomite, and now you're having fractures that are opening up and they're being infilled by these sediments. So the sediments are essentially being sucked into these fractures. But you also have these like paleo highs, and we've got these paleo highs. So we have, those another generation of marine cemented Neptunian dykes forming as well. So we think that this extensional tectonic event is probably responsible for the kind of deposition of the Barney Creek Formation, and that's important because, of course, without that, we don't actually have the unit that end up hosting these zinc deposits. So that's really great. But what's really exciting is that this seems to coincide with other extensional movements that have been previously described in other parts of the Carpentaria zinc belt. So the river event in the Lawnfield Hill platform was described by Scott and Bradshaw and Scott. And similarly, we've got some other studies that have also shown from either seismic or paleomag studies that have shown potential extensional movement at around the same time as well. So we're probably looking at an event that was really significant for the whole of this Carpentaria zinc belt region. So yes, so the main conclusions are that the Neptunian dykes and breccias are synsedimentary in origin, and we think that this represents the onset of a tectonic event at around 1640 million years ago. So it coincided with other extensional events in the area, and we think that extensional tectonics has led to the deepening of the basin and therefore allowed for these deep sediments to be to occur in this area. So that's it from me. Again, want to acknowledge my supervisors and my co-authors, and also to Tech Australia for allowing us access to the cause. But yeah, thanks very much, and any questions?
Amazing. Thank you so much, Mana. As you can see, we're getting lots of congratulatory claps in the meeting as well. Did anyone have any questions? Yes, Edel.
I was wondering, You were describing in one image how some of the cracks are filled with sediments, others are not yet. So that probably indicates that maybe they are filled later, and then there's like a time difference. How do you identify that time difference, and how do you determine the age of them generally?
Yep, that's a really good question because of course, yeah, you're right. It's suggesting that we have a progression of time going on. But because we know that these both of those features, both the maybe I don't know if I can share again. Let's see. Let's see if it will go again. Is it sharing? Okay. So because you've got these so yes, basically, both of these features are indicative of something happening really early in the subsurface. So we know that even though time has progressed, the time really isn't probably like an enormous amount of time, but we are working in the Precambrian. So timing is always an issue in this area, I have to admit. So, we always say, what's a few million years between friends? So we can't get super exact dates, but we know that in order for us to be able to precipitate that marine cement again, we're having to be right up in that in the shallow subsurface. So close. So the timing has to be close enough that you can still fracture something and still have seawater pumping into it. So we know that even though yes, time is progressing, it's not like enough for these things to be to have undergone significant diagenesis and then been kind of like exhumed again and then done and then kind of reopened in that way. So hopefully that answered it. That was kind of slightly long-winded.
No, thank you very much. Yes.
Perfect. We had another question in the chat from Anthony. Any idea what caused the extension slab rollback? Is a potential option?
Yeah. That's a really good question. I think there's a lot of really good research that's happened, kind of working out the tectonics in that area. And really, the problem with an area that's been of great interest is that there's almost anything has been written about this area. And so, yeah, people have suggested lots of things. Whether this was like a rift margin, backup basin, or sag basin. Like loads of things have been kind of suggested for this area. I am not super, as a sedimentologist, not super great at talking about that kind of aspect. So yeah, I'm just going to say I'm not entirely sure. But what we know is that at least the extension has been kind of suggested for this area for a long time, and we're just really glad that we've got like another line of evidence to kind of suggest that as well. So don't know if I've kind of skimmed over that question. I'm really sorry.
No, Anthony's put a love heart. So that sounds great. Perfect. Any other questions? Again, I was curious potentially at more of the tectonic scales. Fantastic, sedimentology was down pat. About if you were thinking, potentially about the way that Australia was forming with the, the knapsack and the if there was that sort of larger tectonic component that might have had, if you'd looked at that yet.
Yeah, so yeah, we kind of steered clear and completely connecting because of course there's like so much there is so much literature on it but yeah, so the larger kind of context of what exactly was happening, like the movement of the plates and things, I kind of deferred that to other studies. But no, I think the what's really great is that this we weren't afraid then to kind of suggest a much bigger event than just saying something locally. So these kind of breccias have another story behind them in that people always interpreted these like something that looked like these breccias to just simply be like kind of mass flow breccias falling off a scarp. And so that's a super local kind of phenomenon, right? But we were kind of able to be like, well, what if actually even in this like the kind of sedimentary record, you can actually find these much bigger scale tectonic events being shown here. So we were kind of, given that there was quite a lot of studies in the tectonic context in this region, it was kind of allowing us to maybe make those conclusions as well. So yeah, again, skimming past it, I'm so sorry. Yeah, I just like don't have the language for it. But yeah,
And
no, thank you though.
And I think that's a great way to, think about these local scale, if we're thinking about a local scale system and being able to put those puzzle pieces together into, a larger paleogeographic or tectonic picture, is always a really good way to think about it holistically. Perfect. In consideration of time, we will move on. But thank you so much, Mana. We'll move on to Edel for our final presentation. So, Edel is a PhD candidate in biogeochemistry with IMAS and UTAS in Hobart, Tasmania, working with trace elements in the Southern Ocean and combining models such as OMP and multi-box concepts to quantify physical and biological processes that are influencing trace element distribution. Looking at water mass reconstructions and isotopic analysis in previous research, and is interested in the applications of trace elements in models. Perfect. Over to you, Edel.
Thank you very much. It was a very nice introduction. Let me see if everything works. Okay. Can you see the screen?
Yep.
Yeah. Nice. Is it moving forward? Yeah. Okay. Nice. Yeah. Hello, everyone. So, as mentioned, I'm a PhD candidate at IMAS in Hobart, and our team is working on trace metals along the MESO I09 transect. I'm going to explain a little bit later about it. Short introduction about me. So yeah, I'm working about trace elements. I've worked with reconstructions in the past. I'm originally from Germany and have studied in like India, Brazil, and Portugal. And now I'm doing my PhD in Australia. I went to a few summer school and conferences, and I'm an HDR representative at RESCOM. RESCOM is a research committee at IMAS, and we're working on funding opportunities and opportunities for students, so especially about event planning, such as student conferences, but also implementing accessibility service for PhD students. I don't know how it is at your university, but we didn't actually have one. And as a student with chronic illness myself, it was very important for me to implement it. So now IMAS has a program for PhD students and a research training action plan. If you want to implement that at your university, give me a message. And now we're actually jumping right into my work. So as mentioned, we are analyzing samples from the MESO voyage. The MESO voyage is a multidisciplinary investigations of the Southern Ocean voyage, which was done in January to March 2024, and it was full depth water column sampling. So from the surface up until the seafloor. And as you can see here, this is the whole Southern Ocean. This is the Australian sector of the Southern Ocean, which is discussed, but in Australia, we call it Australian sector of the Southern Ocean. And the voyage has been distributed into 3 parts. The first part is south of Hobart, is a SOT station, which is a Southern Ocean time series observatory. So there we have like regular measurements of different kind of parameters. We have a few transect close to Antarctica, which now for the first time we actually have a seasonal comparison of trace metal data, which is something which is quite rare in the Southern Ocean due to the ice coverage in winter. And then we have the transect I09S. And here we have the first trace metal measurements along this transect. It's the second transect in the Australian sector of the Southern Ocean that has trace element measurements. So you see that it has quite like a low data coverage. It's really difficult to measure contaminations are really high. And just like with recent developments, now more and more measurements are happening. And the Southern Ocean remains one of the more difficult regions due to climate, water, ice, all of the difficulties. So we're really happy that the measurements went really well, and we've analyzed around 50% of the samples so far, so around 315 for cadmium, copper, cobalt, iron, manganese, lead, and nickel. And the WOMEESA voyage is planned as an interdisciplinary project. So we are trying to combine different kind of fields. We have Thomas working on siderophores. We have Talitha working on ligands. We have Knut working on zooplankton iron cycling. And I'm working on trace elements, and especially which physical and biological processes are influencing them. And for that, I'm going to give a short overview about trace elements in general. So they are chemical elements in very low concentrations, and they often play a really crucial role in oceanic processes. For example, they are often essential for marine life. So many trace elements such as iron, zinc, copper, nickel are micronutrients, which are required for phytoplankton growth and enzyme functions. But they can also, on the other hand, limit biological productivity. So in some regions, such as the Southern Ocean, for example, they can limit biological productivity by the availability of trace elements. So there's something called iron limitation. There's not enough of a trace element actually available for the biological productivity, how it would actually exist. Trace elements can also influence carbon cycling. So there are two ways. The first is through their role in primary production, as they can influence productivity, they can influence the CO2 uptake, and therefore the biological pump. And the second would be directly in the enzyme functions, as they can replace other trace elements or be a trace element itself. And through the enzyme functions, they can actually influence the uptake. They can also be used to monitor pollution and anthropogenic impacts, so such as lead or mercury, for example, which can indicate human activity. They can be used to trace atmospheric depositions or long-range transports. And lastly, trace elements can improve climate models. So if we understand how trace elements interact with the ocean atmosphere system, we can help to refine the models of like past and future climates. And for that, I'm focusing on the element cadmium first. Cadmium has a nutrient-like behavior. So it shows a vertical distribution that is similar to major nutrients such as phosphate, with a surface depletion and a deep water enrichment. So that means that it's influenced by biological uptake and remineralization. Biological uptake, it's basically that cadmium is taken up by phytoplankton and it's used in several biological processes, from which, by the way, only one enzymatic process is identified so far. So there are still a lot of question marks going on. And remineralization is that it's released during organic matter degradation at depth. It's often used as a tracer for biogeochemical processes. So there is a cadmium phosphate tracer that is used to reconstruct past nutrient distributions and ocean circulation, which is like quite fun and interesting. But it also has a sensitivity to both physical and biological drivers. So we should have a look at that later. Distributions are shaped by both the water mass transfer, so the physical aspect, and biological activity, which I've described before of the biological pump. And lastly, it has a particular relevance for the Southern Ocean. The Southern Ocean in general plays a really crucial role in setting the global nutrient distribution due to its intense water mass formations and the limited biological activity that's going on there. And cadmium is a really great trace element to actually investigate that a little bit further, as it's influenced by both physical and biological factors. And for that, we're gonna have a look a little bit closer on what that means. So here you can see a depth profile for cadmium and phosphate here on the other side in different stations of the global ocean. So phosphate is widely incorporated into cells because it's an essential nutrient for marine organisms, and therefore it's a great indicator for biological activity. And you remember I said like about surface depletion, in the surface, and then remineralization, so it means higher concentrations in the depth, and that's exactly what we can see here. And we can also see that cadmium is actually quite comparable to phosphate. So we know that both physical and biological influences exist, but the way how it looks here, it seems like that as phosphate, the biological indicator, that there's a great role of biological process and biological influence. And the way how we investigate this is by correlating them with each other. And here we have the global values. Here we have values for the Southern Ocean. And we can see that there's a really high correlation actually, and which is therefore indicating that biological activity could be the main driver. However, what we can see as well is something that's quite uncommon in correlations, something that is defined as a kink, which is like the deviation from the linear relationship. And why the kink exists is actually still highly debated. So we know that it's probably with complex biogeochemical processes which haven't been identified so far. But there are a few studies that suggest different things. So we have one study from Cullen in 2006, which suggests that the reasoning is that in iron-limiting conditions, cadmium in uptake actually increases, while with phosphate, as it's an essential nutrient, it's basically always stable. Which would mean that in regions such as the Southern Ocean, the kink would be stronger, and therefore, as we have iron-limiting conditions, and therefore the deviation would just like be bigger. This is something that with the new data that we're having now will be really nice to investigate. There are others such as like Wu and Roshan and De Vries, who suggest that the difference is actually in remineralization depth. So the remineralization of cadmium and phosphate occurs in different kind of depth in the ocean, and that could cause the kink. As mentioned before, still highly discussed, and I'm hoping I can contribute to that a little bit. And here we have like a little overview of the data we have so far. You can see the correlation again, cadmium and phosphate, and we can see that this looks kind of like the kink that we've seen before, but as this is around 50% of the data, I haven't really defined the kink yet. I'm waiting to have like more data so that I can probably pinpoint it. However, what we can see as well that we do have some other influences that do not fit to biological activity. So when we look at this, we can see, okay, actually biological activity is not the main driver, and we have to look at other factors as well. And with that, we have cadmium versus temperature, and we can see, oh, there's also a high correlation. Temperature is a conservative parameter that's used to indicate physical processes that are influencing. And we see there's a high correlation. We have some surface samples that do not fit, which makes sense as biological activity happens in the surface mainly. But besides that, it looks pretty good. So now we should look at the physical processes and how they influence. And by that, I'm just going to give a short overview again. So we are here in the Australian sector. This is the transect, and we have a lot of frontal systems that are influencing the transect. And this is something that is quite rare, that we have like a complete transect available that goes basically through a whole ocean basin. And the first step for the physical process is to identify the water masses. If we know the water masses, we can find out the contributions, and we usually do this with a temperature salinity diagram. So we're plotting temperature versus salinity and take values from literature and compare them to our real values. And as I mentioned before, we can see already a few things that we are still they're still unclear. So we have a limited data coverage. We don't really know the water mass influence. We have like the biological versus physical controls, but we don't really know who are the drivers. And as a last thing that I'm like specifically interested, but that's for the third chapter, we don't really have a knowledge about trace element interactions. So we don't really know how multiple elements are interacting with each other, how they influence biological productivity, and how they're interlinked cycles. And I'm trying to open those research gap a little bit. I'm going to have a very short view of what I'm doing. So we can see here a transect. We have cadmium distribution in the colors. We have Australia here. We have Antarctica here. And we can see that the concentration varies within the depth. We have water masses, and we can also see that the cadmium distribution actually follows these water masses and that it looks quite similar. This is something called conservative behavior, which indicates that physical processes are driving, but we also have the biological. And lastly, we have terrestrial inputs that haven't been mentioned at all yet. And we have benthic and hydrothermal sources, as we can see here, for example, and here, which would have to be quantified as well. And to do this, the first step would be to use an extended optimum multiparameter analysis. So here we can see like the short overview of laboratory analysis, and the optimum multiparameter analysis is a modeling approach to quantify the water mass contribution at each sample location. I'll go a little bit deeper into this actually. So I know everyone hates equations, but this one is really simple and it's quite fun because we actually just use a linear function, which is like super simple, and use a mass balance based method to quantify water mass fractions and mixing. I'm going to start at an end member properties. So we take literature values from water masses that we know, and we define the water masses based on them. Then we take the water mass properties at our transect. And here you can see this is the traditional temperature salinity water mass identification I mentioned before. But now we go a little step further. We are able, with the OMP, to identify the water mass contributions, so those are abbreviations for water masses, at one specific sample. We are doing this for all sample and get an image on which position, which kind of water masses are mixed, how. Then we are able to use these those mixing ratios to reconstruct the cadmium concentrations based on water mass movements. And then we can compare the modeled cadmium distribution with the observed values, and the rest of it is influenced by biological processes and hydrothermal sources. Like this, we can go step by step to slowly quantify all the processes that are influencing. And by that, we are able to generate high-quality trace element data. We are able to investigate the physical processes. We are able to quantify all of the influencing processes. And lastly, we can understand the trace element interactions and the relationships between cadmium and other trace elements to improve the understanding of biogeochemical cycling. And now I'm open for questions. Thank you very much.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Edel. Do we have any questions? If not, I do. So it was a really great presentation. Thank you so much. I was curious as well if you were considering some of the like the longer term variability and perhaps things like the southern annular mode and their effect on the the density, salinity, temperature that would be at play at depth, if it would.
It's a great question. I would say I would if we would have the data. The limitation of the whole data set is that it's just a 1-point measurement. And this is something that makes, especially also in modeling, makes it quite difficult to do anything. But the reality is that most trace metal measurements are just in a 1-point measurement, because those kind of voyages are massive. They are very expensive. They are often going through like the whole Pacific, the whole Southern Ocean. So they don't happen very often. And what I'm trying is exactly to use, even though we have this limited data, to still use something and create like a simple model output. It also goes on into a little bit like a multi-box model approach, so that we are able to use this data and to like continue developing it just as if we would have time series available.
Amazing. Sounds like a great idea with the data you have to be able to extrapolate that out.
Well, we'll see if it works.
Fingers crossed. Look forward to seeing how it goes. Were there any further questions? I'm happy to open it up as well if anyone had any questions from any of our 3 presenters today. We do have another question about the recording, and it will be released. So certainly watch this space. We will be releasing it. It's already one of our most requested, pre it being even conducted. So it will certainly be coming out. Perhaps it would be a good idea as well. We did have Erin's question in the chat. If Erin and Sam would like to vocalize or expand on their responses. So that's being able to be documented as well. That would be amazing.
Sure, I'm happy to ask. Thank you everyone for your really, really fantastic presentations. I feel like when I did my PhD 5 years ago, I was nowhere near the caliber that you guys are. So you're all like phenomenally impressive researchers, and we're so happy that you've been able to share your work with WOMEESA. So my question for Sam was around processing of rare earth element deposits. They're kind of notoriously grotty, and Australia processes the rare earth deposit, the carbonatite deposit that we have offshore, because local environmental regulations are quite strict, and it becomes economically prohibitive to process onshore. So my question was just around what are the implications environmentally of processing the clay rare earth type deposits, and is that a consideration around applying an exploration strategy for those types of deposits in Australia?
Yeah, do I just reply to that now? Sorry. Yeah, I guess one of the things as well to do with environmental regulations, I think as well cost as well. I think plays a factor too in sending things offshore to get processed. And yeah, with every deposits, there's still some concerns around ion adsorption clay deposits, and whether that's to do with water usage, or whether that's to do, I mean, one of the most common reagent salts that's typically used is ammonium sulfate, and there have been some concerns around eutrophication. But yeah, don't quote me on this. But I think as well in China, they did try in situ leaching as well, which has a lot of concerns environmentally. So I think more people try and now do heap leaching, but of course, laws are still broken around that. So yeah, eutrophication can be a bit of a concern if using ammonium sulfate, particularly if it is in situ. But also other salts that people use, such as magnesium chloride and calcium chloride, can also have some concerns with maybe retaining heavy metal contamination, and maybe like the dewatering after mining. So yeah, there's still some concerns that need to be ironed out, but hopefully with a better understanding of things, we can incorporate mining and processing into that exploration model to better navigate this rare demand and transition.
Brilliant. Thanks so much for that, Sam.
I also did have a question, sorry, to do with the cadmium. I was just kind of wondering if you see a similar trend to do with that kink in the relationship with other trace elements and phosphate.
Great question. No.
Okay, yeah. And
I don't know if all of them. That's a good question, something I should actually check. The one that I've checked so far, no, this kink didn't exist, and it's also one of the reasons why people are like still a little bit discussing on what could be the reasons, and they're like the theories are more and more emerging into conclusions, which I think is really good, but the biggest problem is data resolution. We just don't have so much trace metal data available. And then it often happens that it stays a theory for a little bit longer.
I also have another question. So I'm really not familiar with looking at trace elements in the ocean. But obviously you can only do so much in a PhD. I was just also wondering if some of the literature out there also looked at the relationship with cadmium and mineralogy, or with cadmium and the different size fractions.
I don't know if it exists. I'm not going so deep into it. I know that there have been a few laboratory experiments as well, especially when trying to find out what kind of biological processes are influenced by cadmium and where is it used in. And there are like a lot of enzyme functions which are using it. But I'm not sure. Yeah, I'm not sure. Sorry.
That's okay, thank you.
Amazing. Well, thank you to our three speakers once again. That was a fantastic postgraduate showcase. So thank you so much once again, and thanks everyone for joining today for our WOMEESA Postgrad July showcase. See you all again soon. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks so
Thank
much.
you.
So good.